Heidi ho there. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV 6, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining us is Aaron William Freeland. Hello, Aaron. I saw you almost crack a smile there. You weren't hiding it.
I'm
There you
always
go.
happy, Frank. You know that. I got to
Well,
keep a smile on my face.
okay. I'm glad you have. Okay. So how you been?
Been doing all right. How about yourself?
Getting over a cold flu thing and a little of the dark side of life. Yeah. So other than the fact that it's a struggle, getting by. There's always the ups and downs of life, and I enjoy the challenge. And since I'm very challenged, I enjoy life a lot. I guess is how I would look at that. I guess
Oh,
maybe.
that's a good attitude to have there, Frank.
Maybe. All right. So let's talk about the people behind me. Let's talk about the Canadian Football League. Let's talk about the Riders and how they undermine the Elks' opportunity to clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah, this was a very important game for the Roughies. They're now 8-7-1 and have secured themselves a playoff spot thanks to a 28-24 win over the Edmonton Elks at Commonwealth. Um, Edmonton had a chance to go ahead late in the fourth quarter, trailing by 4 points, but unfortunately, a fumble forced by defensive back Amari Henderson stopped the Elks' march and basically sealed the win for Saskatchewan. Trevor Harris had himself 358 yards and a pair of touchdowns. With 2 interceptions, and Shea Patterson added a rushing score in a huge night for the Riders offense. I'm very glad to see them do that. This helps clarify the standings, I think, in the West, with Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, and BC all showing themselves as having clinched a spot, and with Edmonton and Calgary being on the outside looking in for the first time in, I believe, 75 plus years.
Since 1945.
It's been a while since something like this has happened.
65 and 24 is 65 and 79.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just wow, how the mighty have fallen. Well, I mean, it's amazing because it's kind of hard to miss the playoffs in the Canadian Football League. You have 9 teams, 6 teams get in.
Oh, for sure.
The odds are pretty good to make the playoffs.
Exactly. And I think for the most part on the eastern side, most of that has been taken care of as well. There are still a couple question marks, but um, you know, uh, after this weekend, I think the West is fairly clear. So,
And the East could be.
oh, very definitely. I mean,
The
Toronto's
clarity
played.
is going to be left to who finishes where. That's where the clarity after this
Yeah.
weekend will probably be.
No, and thanks to Ottawa's tie, they do still have a point over the Argonauts, so that makes it a little bit more of a hill for the Argonauts to climb. But as it currently stands, nobody's catching Montreal and Winnipeg. Those two are way out in the front.
There you go.
Um, so there you have it.
Speaking of Winnipeg and Hamilton, Oliveira of the Blue Bombers, proving that he probably will end up being the Canadian MOP and maybe the MOP.
Yeah, after a touchdown and 147 yards rushing, that very definitely puts a stamp on the win for the Blue Bombers. They basically won going away. Bo Levi Mitchell went 15 for 28 in a losing effort. Zach Colaros went 13 of 19 with 201 passing yards and a touchdown. Kenny Lawler caught 3 balls for 78 yards, and Terry Wilson Jr. ran in for a couple of short yardage scores. Basically, everywhere that Hamilton turned, it was close for, I think, about the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, and unfortunately, after that, it was all over bar the shouting. Yeah, it was a big night for the Blue Bombers. So they successfully salted that away.
Another season where the Ticats have a great second half, but it's not enough to overcome the poor first half. Or maybe first, third, second, third, and whatever. But anyway, The slow start is costing Hamilton the playoffs, and their fans are getting frustrated. And management's trying. The Ticats are trying. They're trying everything they can to make it work. They just can't seem to make it work. We'll see what happens for the rest of this year. There's still a hope. They're not done yet mathematically. The odds are very slim, and the help that they're going to get is the team that beat them this week, in the hopes that that team beats the other team, the Argos, this coming week. So that's what they're hoping for.
That's the issue that you get, though, with a game in hand. Hamilton only has 2 games left. Toronto has 3.
Right.
So
And
this is where we run into a bit of a stumbling block because Hamilton is going to have to win out, and
yeah,
Toronto
and
will
if
have
the
to
Argos win
lose.
one, it's over.
Yeah,
They'd have
exactly.
to lose out, pretty much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're totally right. So if they win against Winnipeg, which they've done, they did it earlier this year when when Winnipeg wasn't playing that well. Let's talk about the Riders, and they added a national defensive lineman.
Yeah, so they signed Benoit Marion. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He spent time with the Ticats and the Argonauts this season, suited up for 9 games and during 6 special teams tackles. He was originally selected by the Owls in the 3rd round, 25th overall of the 2020 CFL draft. Signed with the Argos in October of 2021 and played in 28 games between 2021 and 2024. In 2022, he actually got his first career touchdown when he recovered a blocked kick and returned it 24 yards to the end zone. So he also won a Grey Cup with that season with the Argos, beating the Blue Bombers 24-23. So they know what they're getting there. He's a known quantity for them.
His defensive coach was none other than the head coach, Corey Mace of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Deontay Williams suspended. Oh, my. And 2 were fined this week after the Week 17 games.
Yeah, so Deontay Williams has been suspended a game for delivering an illegal and dangerous tackle to Ottawa wide receiver Khalil Pimpleton, and for committing a non-football act by striking another Ottawa player. Montreal wide receiver Charleston Rambo has been fined for violating the CFL's code of conduct by simulating the firing of a weapon during a celebration. And Jeffrey Canton Arku has been fined for violating the CFL's code of conduct by, again, simulating the firing of a weapon during a celebration. Both things that are not allowed by the CFL.
Absolutely. All right, let's go over to the National Hockey League and let's talk about those Habs and Sens.
This was actually a very fun game to watch. I say that a lot about Ottawa games because I watch a lot of them, but was not expecting Pinto to have a hat trick. That was a nice little surprise. After missing last year's preseason, as well as a good chunk of the season for reasons we've covered before, Pinto has probably been in just glad to be here mode all this fall. But with a hat trick in the final preseason game, he's definitely made his point for coming back. Michael Amadio also had a really good game, scoring a goal and providing an assist, while Linus Olmark, ex of the Boston Bruins, stopped 23 of the 25 shots he faced. Now, this is a rubber match from a game they had on last Tuesday. Travis Green and Martin Saint-Louis opted for a cautious approach with their lineups for this game, aiming to avoid any more injuries before opening night. The Habs decided not to play their top line, while the Sens rested 4 of their top 6. So there you have it. Just taking things a little bit easier. This preseason hasn't been easy, it seems, for anybody. Just with the number of players that have gone down with surprising and freak injuries. So,
well, speaking of players and speaking of the Senators, they've made some decisions.
Yeah, the Senators are likely to open the regular season with a Stapchuk and McEwen on the roster. They placed Gaudette and Jenik on waivers. Adam Gaudette, a former Marlies player, signed there during the summer. This was all done at around 2 p.m. That was the deadline to put players on waivers. The actual deadline for submitting rosters was an hour and 12 minutes ago. We're still waiting for additional information from the league into some of the finals like that, final roster decisions. Sorry, like that. But this is clearing some space and making sure that they can bring players up and down as needed, just in case injuries happen.
Flames cleared some space as well.
Yeah, Jacob Peltier, Cole Schwint, and Devin Cooley are all on waivers to go down to the Calgary Wranglers. all of these players are expected to clear waivers and to be reporting to the AHL team. Um, Cooley appeared in 6 games for the San Jose Sharks and 14 games for the Rochester Americans last season. Pelletier has appeared in 37 games for the Flames and has 10 points, and Schwint recorded 36 points in 66 AHL games last season and had no points in 4 games with the Flames.
Another way of trimming the roster, if you will, is putting people on injured reserve. The Flames did that as well.
Yes, Yegor Sharangovich has been put on IR due to a lower body injury. Apparently, this occurred during Friday's game when Vladislav Namestnikov fell onto Sharangovich's leg. Happened behind the net. His absence is definitely going to be felt, particularly for Kadri and Kuzmenko, because he's usually been the trigger man for their setups. So we'll have to see how all of this balances out at the end of the day.
And the Oilers, of course, they of the mini Leafs team have another Leaf to ponder and to use appropriately. One that's been misused in the past, and that's Travis Dermott.
Yeah, Travis had a very good training camp, and by merits alone should earn a roster spot. But signing Dermott would force the Oilers to waive either Josh Brown, who they just signed to a 3-year deal, or Troy Stetcher, who would also likely be claimed. Dermott may be able to parlay his strong training camp into an NHL role elsewhere. He would be a good fit for a team like San Jose or Calgary, or even teams that are tied up against a camp like Dallas or Tampa Bay. But at the same time, the Oilers can't afford to let him get away. So it's an issue for him. He's played well. The unfortunate thing is it's going to be difficult to slot him in somewhere just because of salary expectations and his experience in the league.
And you highlighted at the beginning of that conversation the issue. You can only have X amount of contracts. And these last players are at the bottom, if you will, of your list of contracts. In other words, these are not the players that you think of the most. By the way, the teams that pick off one of those players better have a player that's not as good as the one they're picking, or know that they have one that, because then they have to release that player. And that's why you don't see much movement in this regard.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, this is all a lot of paper transactions at this point, just trying to shuffle all the cards and make sure that the deck is in order before everything kicks off.
And they're not the players at the heart of the team. They're perimeter players, and it isn't beneficial, in my opinion. Another thing I'd like to mention about that is, now you're taking a player who's been in camp with a team, for a month or whatever it is, 5-6 weeks, right? Now you're going to bring him onto your team now, and you're going to let go a guy who's been on your team working those 6 weeks, who's in your system, understands how you have to do things. Differentiate between two players, the difference would have to be spectacular for you to make that move, because you're foregoing a lot of training and a lot of how this player fits into your program. And just because he's being put on waivers now doesn't mean he's not important to your lineup. He's somebody that will in the future fit into the club, or when there's an injury, be able to fit in. And I refer back to what I just said. These players are playing within the system. It's much easier to bring that guy up than it is to bring the guy that was over at the other team that you thought, in the other bush, much nicer. Maybe I'll grab that person. But then you got to get them into your system and how you do things. And that's why you don't see much movement in this regard, just because of that. These are players that are in transition. And to be in transition, they have to be ready to go to the big team. They have to know what they're up against, right? These are guys that almost made the team. That's who they are.
Yeah, these are the bubble players, and unfortunately for
Right.
some of them, the bubble bursts. Others will pass through. So,
and there's players on the other teams that are exactly in the same position with the exact same kind of ability. It's like a menu. You're just, all you're doing is you're exchanging fries. You're not exchanging fries for a vegetable. You're just exchanging fries. So you bet those fries better be much better, the ones you're picking up, because they might even be cold by the time you get to eat them, because now you got to prepare them on how you like to eat them. And they've already been prepared once. So,
Keying into your metaphor, Frank, some of these players we're hoping turn into bag fries. And those are the surprise fries you find at the bottom of the bag that seem just a little bit extra tasty and do a little bit more for the team.
well, because it's a nice surprise that you still have another fry.
Exactly.
So if they work that, that's essentially what makes them an asset is when you need them. And now isn't when you need them. You're shedding players. That's the whole point there too. That's another additional point to throw in there. Okay, let's talk about the Canucks and who's Nils Höglander.
So Nils Höglander is a guy that they've actually had a little bit of success with. He's played 221 games with the Canucks. He spent his entire career there. In 221 games, he has 50 goals and 90 points, with an additional 2 points in 11 playoff games. Compared to the rest of his draft class, Höglander actually ranks fifth in regular season games played and 11th in regular season points. They've signed him to a 3-year extension worth $9 million. The extension kicks in at the start of the 2025-2026 series and has an AAV of $3 million. He had 24 goals and 12 assists for 36 points last season, which was new personal highs for him. So they're trying to lock in what they hope will be a future offensive threat.
We're talking second liner here.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good scoring second liner.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the Canucks still. We'll talk about what's this? The Bruins lose a goalie?
Yeah, there's been some back and forth here. Basically, what happened is Boston has lost goalie Yuri Patera through waivers to the Vancouver Canucks. Now, it's not exactly surprising because Boston picked up Yuri from the Canucks about 3 days ago on waivers. So they basically just sent him back and forth between the two teams.
There it is.
Yeah,
that's the whole point we were talking about.
exactly. And the issue here is as well. He wasn't going to stick around with with Boston for long, anyways. Especially not in light of the fact that Swayman signed his new contract yesterday, what 8 years at 8.25 per. So they've got that situation well in hand, so they can afford to lose him.
Now, to remind folks, Maple Leaf Talk's back on Fridays, so join us for Maple Leaf Talk, and we can do a little bit now.
Sure.
The Leafs beat the Wings. They finished with a really good record of 4-1-1, I think, is what they finished with.
It was a decent preseason record. Wasn't too upset with that. Austin Matthews is healthy again. John Tavares had a very good night. Matthews was actually the setup man for Tavares on the power play.
Did you see that play? Did you see that play?
It was pretty. Yeah. It was pretty.
That wasn't just a dipsy doodle. That was a holy mackerel.
No, and you know what? Steven Lorenz has also been making a case for himself. He scored the tying goal in the first period after Ryan Reeves kicked in with some heavy physical play behind the net to get the puck to him out in front.
The Leafs are going with fourth line big boys.
Yeah, I can't say that
I've been complaining about this for years, that the Leafs were too small. This team's a little bigger.
No, they've gone with some genuine gronks on the back end, so it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out for them. But I'm glad to see it. I'm a little bit more oomph on the back end never hurt nobody.
The goalies are bigger, the defensemen are bigger, and some of the forwards are bigger.
Definitely.
Has to be that way for the playoffs, Aaron, buddy.
Yeah, hopefully they can manage to, set themselves up well for that, and we don't end up playing Boston again in the first round. But that's for April.
Well, it's you need players that when they see players like Matthews or Marner or any other player that's more of or their former captain Tavares, when they're being fondled, and I mean that in a negative sense, that you have somebody who can babysit. And the Leafs have babysitters now. Now it's watching Matthews get tossed around like a rag doll and smiling, those days are done. That ain't happening anymore. And it's about time. It's taken too long. Never liked Dubas because of that he thought he could do it with midgets, small players. No. You need big guys in the playoffs. That's just a fact. Leafs placed, oh my goodness, Raffai and Murray on waivers. Now, Murray's not injured, but he's happy to be number 3 in the goalie situation. So this is something that you see. Will it work out for the Leafs, you think?
We'll have to see about that. Wall played well in his last appearance. That was on the Saturday. Now Murray signed a signed an $875,000 contract this summer, so we know he's going to be around for at least one more year. The Leafs are potentially looking at going with a platoon system for the big club and swapping around two or three goalies. Right now, the Marlies currently have Denis Hildeby, Vyacheslav Peksa, Artur Aksymov, and John Gillies floating around. Not to mention Matt Murray, who has been waived. There's also Marshall Rafai, who had a very good preseason. There were a lot of people talking about Rafai, like, how come I haven't seen this guy before? And it's like, well,
yeah,
a lot of time with the Marlies, you know.
And he has been up to the Leafs. He was up with the Leafs last year. He did play a couple of games.
Yeah, he hasn't been bad for them. He hasn't been remarkable, which I think is kind of what you're looking for, is a defenseman that you don't particularly notice, but at the same time, he's not afraid to bang the boards and throw the body around a little bit.
And he's sizably bigger than Lindgren.
Exactly. You know, and I think that was part of the toss-up here, was we were concerned about whether or not Rafai would make the lineup. Liljegren didn't have a particularly inspiring training camp, but it is what it is.
If he did, they would have traded him. I'm getting that sense that, you know, they're going to give him a chance to play well, and then they're going to trade him. They really are dedicated to this different idea about a defense. Size does matter. You know, we've seen where their Trey Living was in Calgary. He didn't like small defensemen there.
One last thing I want to hit on before we wrap up here is those stories about Max Pacioretty were true. He has signed a 1-year, $873,770 contract. Not only that, but Steve Lorentz and Cade Weber have also been signed with the Leafs. Lorentz got a $775,000 contract coming off a Stanley Cup win with the Florida Panthers. Weber got himself a 2-year, two-way contract starting with the 2025-2026 season with an average annual value of $825,000. So there we go. We're nicely set up heading into the season. Hopefully, go ahead, Frank.
No, finish.
I was going to say, hopefully this will be good. We won't have anything to report on Wednesday, but come Friday, we will have a full episode of Leaf Talk for you,
talking about the games. And the other thing to mention about Pacioretty's contract: $600,000 to $100,000 in bonuses, depending on how many games he plays. 10 and 35 being the number that you wait for. Yep. Thanks for doing this, Aaron. Much appreciated.
Always glad, Frank.
All right, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Aaron Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for Candid Frank Live and other news and entertainment sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci, 10:30 on YouTube. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.